Whoa, the kids of Riverdale actually go to class? Let's break down Season 4, Episode 2 of Riverdale and find out just what happened. What's going on, you lovely people? Lisa here, and it is time to dive into another episode of Riverdale. But before I do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because I'm always sitting here rambling about random TV shows. But now, back to business. So after a heartbreaking tribute episode to Luke Perry to open Season 4, Riverdale is back to its regular shenanigans, and the show is introducing us to some possible new villains now that hottie but baddie Edgar Evernever has run off with the rest of the farm. So let's just break it all down. So first we have a tiny time jump. Now we're at the last day of break before senior year starts, and you know what that calls for? A Core 4 sex party. No, but really, let's hope Veronica gets that living room deep cleaned ASAP, because it seems like there's like some Jughead juices all over. Anyway, before school starts, we have Archie asking Monroe to come to school with him and to try out for the football team. We also learn that Alice has stopped sending her reports from the farm to Charles, so Betty's worried about her, but her big bro doesn't seem to be. Now Veronica, she's being pressured to make a statement siding with either Hiram or Hermione, but she doesn't want to do either. And Cheryl is still talking to JJ's dead body, which hasn't seemed to decompose or smell or whatever dead bodies do after it's been buried for a few years. Well, let's talk about Cheryl first. So Cheryl goes head to head with our new principal. Keeping with the bee theme, Mr. Honey has moved to town. Get it? Because we have Weatherby and Honey. Yeah, you guys are smart, I know that. Anyway, he's played by Kerr Smith, and let's just say no one likes Mr. Honey, and his first encounter with the gang is not a pleasant one.
Things are going to be different this year. We'll have order, discipline, consequences. Now, get out of my sight.
Mr. Honey then decides to face off with Cheryl when he cancels the back-to-school dance, and you don't want to get on Cheryl's bad side. We should all know this by now, but I guess Mr. Honey, he's a little naive that way. So in retaliation, Cheryl decides to throw a back-to-school party instead, which ends up being broken up by FP because Mr. Honey called in a complaint to the sheriff's office. And now the war between Cheryl and Mr. Honey really begins as we see she leaves a beehive on his desk. Yeah, sometimes Honey's not so sweet. I gotta stop with these weird-ass puns. But it also seems like Cheryl might not be able to hide her little secret anymore, as both Tony and drunk Reggie almost get down the hallway where she has JJ locked up. Yeah, I can't wait to see Cheryl try to explain that whole situation to Tony, and for Tony to be like, not piecing out, that'll surprise me. That's what you know is true love if she stays around. Now remember in the Griffins and Gargoyles episodes where we had all the parents reuniting, those flashbacks and everything, and Reggie's dad was one of the parents that was involved? Well, there was a hint back in those episodes that this guy was not so nice. In other words, abusive, and we finally see that come back to light in this episode. Now Reggie is immediately threatened when he sees that his good old BFF Archie has brought his new BFF Monroe to school. Then at football practice, Monroe shows up Reggie on the field while Reggie's dad is sitting there watching, yelling at him from the parking lot, and Archie sees this happen. Then in the locker room after practice, Reggie decides to pick a fight with Monroe, and it's kind of like, damn, Reggie, you got some cojones on you, because have you seen the size and abs on Monroe? Like, I know I have, and I prefer him shirtless over Archie and Reggie, if I'm being honest. Archie pulls Reggie aside, and Reggie explains that he's feeling like his captain spot's being threatened and all of this, and Archie just calls him out, bringing up that he saw Reggie's dad over yelling at him and telling Reggie to basically man up. That doesn't go so well, and then we have the next practice where Reggie's dad is right back playing parking lot coach, and a fight again erupts on the field, and Reggie then goes for Archie, telling him he's dead to him. Then, after Cheryl's party is broken up, Archie takes drunk Reggie for a walk and a talk, and we finally have Reggie opening up to Archie about his dad. And Reggie decides it's time to take a stand. And by taking a stand, it means taking a baseball bat to his dad's car that he thinks his dad loves more than him. I mean, it is a Corvette. I'd be a little... Nah, I'm just kidding. But really, I mean, all Reggie did was damage the windshield. Like, if you're really gonna stick it to the man, damage the body and stuff. I feel like that's harder to fix, maybe. Well, in a turn of events, Reggie doesn't seem to get his ass beat for hurting this car. Instead, it opens a dialogue for Reggie and his dad. They have a talk, and Reggie reveals that his dad will no longer be at practice, and all seems to also be well with Reggie, or Archie, or what are you gonna call them? Archie and Reggie. They mend their bromance. As for Veronica, she thinks she's a shoo-in for Harvard, but there's something that may ruin her chances, and that is her family name. This episode, we see her being pestered and stalked by reporters and paparazzi who even pay a kid to take a picture of her for their, stories, and he chooses to do it in the locker room like a perv instead of, discreetly, doing it in the hallway or class or something. Well, after all these reporters are on campus because this school seems to have the worst security, Veronica's called into Principal Honey's office, and he informs her of an article that has a source that is saying Veronica is responsible for all of Hiram's crimes. And Honey thinks maybe Veronica should take a step back from school for a bit until it's all sorted out because he just doesn't like the drama. Veronica then decides to accuse Reggie of being that inside source because it was supposedly someone who worked at Le Bon Nuit. She realizes it wasn't Reggie, and then she goes to visit Hiram, thinking she's basically Hannah Montana again with that stupid wig she keeps wearing to fool people, and it just makes you realize how dumb people on TV are sometimes. Then again, I guess all the people in Metropolis or wherever Clark Kent lives seem to fall for the, glasses, no glasses thing. I don't think it would work for me. Anyway, Veronica asks Hiram if he's the one who leaked the story, and, well, he responds.
I told the world what you are. A lodge. Through and through. Deal with it.
And, well, it is this that prompts Veronica to butcher Chicago. I'm sorry, why does there have to be so much singing on this show? We have Veronica singing all that jazz while holding a press conference at the Speakeasy, where she says that she did the thing she's accused of, but did it under duress because Hiram was forcing her, and she is standing with neither parent. Then she tells Archie she's now going to go by Veronica Gomez, with Gomez being Hermione's last name, but isn't she pissed off at both parents? I get that Lodge is tainted, but also I feel like if you take your mother's maiden name, you're sort of siding with your mom. Also, who would be signing these paperwork for? She's not 18 yet. Who's acting as her guardian? Where is Smithers? Why isn't he making the decisions? I have so many questions. I guess I'll save those for another time, though, and let's move on to Jughead. You see, Riverdale just seems to want to separate him from the group so many times or put his life in danger, and it's just can't we pick on somebody else for once? But this time, they're doing it by sending him to Stonewall Prep. Now, a teacher comes to Riverdale to speak with Jughead. His name's Mr. Chipping, and he was a judge in an essay contest that Jughead entered over the summer, and while Jughead didn't win, his essay impressed Mr. Chipping. And, well, he teaches at Stonewall Prep, and he wants to offer Jughead a spot at the school. Now, Jughead turns it down because why would he want to be away from his precious Betty? But Mr. Chipping, he's a persistent one and pays a visit to FP, and Jughead agrees to at least take a tour of the school. And when he does, he's introduced to a guy who we're supposed to believe is a teenager but looks 40 and even older than this teacher guy, and that guy shows Jughead around, and everything just seems to impress Jughead. They even invite him to a book discussion on Moby Dick the next day, which definitely seems like it is fake and set up just to try to get Jughead into this school. Something shady's going on, man. Now, even though Jughead is kind of impressed with this school, it doesn't seem like he's budging, but then he gets a little nudge from Betty because Betty is in English class with him, and pretty much everybody's falling asleep, especially Jughead. I think the teacher may have even fallen asleep because Betty pulls Jughead out of class and no one seems to bat an eye or say anything. But Betty essentially tells Jughead he needs to go to Stonewall Prep. So we see Jughead put on his preppy uniform, and then FP reveals that Jughead's grandpa actually went to Stonewall for a few months before he quit. Then we have our flash forward. Now at the end of last season we had a flash forward where we saw Archie, Veronica, and Betty standing around a fire with blood on them and burning their clothes, including Jughead's beanie, but Jughead was nowhere to be seen. Well, that was at spring break. We then have another part of this spring break flash forward as we see Betty and the gang leading a search party in the woods, yelling out Jughead's name. So yes, it seems like Jughead is missing, and possibly Mr. Chipping and Stonewall Prep are the cause. I mean, come on, this guy totally screamed bad news from the start, right? The way that he really wanted Jughead at the school, what's the purpose for that? Are we going to learn more about what happened with Grandpa Jones there at this school? Why he quit? Do they need Jughead for a sacrifice or something? Is this the farm all over again? What kind of weird cult is this? Something just doesn't smell right. And I'm also not excited for this because I don't want to have to hear these prep school douches call Jughead Forsyth all season. Just call him Jughead. Anyway, moving on. Lastly, let's talk about Betty, Kevin, and Charles. So Kevin obviously has spent the summer away from the farm trying to get his shit back together, and he goes to Betty asking for another chance, saying he's better now and he wants to prove himself. But honestly, this is just my favorite Betty line this episode.
You mean like when you dragged me by my ankles to get a lobotomy?
Yeah, I'm most ashamed of that.
Yeah, if Kevin did that to me, I don't think I'd be ready to forgive him either. And it seems like Betty's not quite ready to give Kevin another chances. You know, she doesn't fully accept him as part of the paper anymore. She's like, you gotta fill out an application. Also, Betty's kind of busy worrying about Alice since they haven't heard from her, so she goes to see Charles, but Charles isn't anywhere to be seen in his office, and he's magically just left all his files open on the desk, and it seems like he doesn't lock doors. What kind of FBI agent is this guy? But you know Betty, her middle name seems to be Snoop, and she starts snooping around, and she finds out that Charles and the FBI have been snooping on Kevin's phone calls and texts with Fangs. Now, if you remember, Fangs is still with the farm, so they decide to use Kevin to get information. So Betty hangs out with Kevin under the pretense of mending their friendship to get him on her side. She then plants some information with him, saying that the FBI have a witness who's ready to testify against the farm. So of course, Kevin goes blabbing his mouth to Fangs, but Fangs, he doesn't really want to see Kevin. He's more interested in this information. And now he wants a name, so he leaves. And then Betty shows up behind Kevin, and it's kind of like, yeah, caught you red-handed, buddy. And she and Charles interrogate Kevin. Now, Kevin pleads that all he wanted to do was see Fangs. He's not back into the farm. He doesn't care about that. He just wanted his relationship with Fangs because Fangs was honestly the only one who texted him back over the summer during his, his recovery period, and Betty never answered him. So while Betty believes Kevin now, Charles still wants to cut Kevin loose and find another way to get to Alice. Betty, though, isn't giving up on Kevin just yet, and she goes rogue, telling Kevin the truth about Alice being undercover and coming up with another plan and story to tell Fangs that Penelope Blossom is this witness. Kevin then goes to Fangs with that info while Betty goes to see Charles, who seems to have changed his mind about Kevin, but then Betty ruins it by revealing that she already told Kevin everything, including about Alice being undercover. And this just pisses, Charles off, because if there's one thing you do, you don't blow someone's cover, especially someone that you don't think you can trust. Then Kevin walks in saying that the plan worked, and he says that the farm is staying in an abandoned hotel and Edgar is armed.
And Betty, he's armed. There were guns, and he's building something, and
Edgar's digging in. He's getting ready for war.
So now they gotta figure out if Kevin's actually telling the truth, if the farm maybe figured it out and is setting them up, but also, is Charles even trustworthy? I mean, between Charles, Mr. Chipping, and Honey coming to town, Mr. Honey, it seems like only bad people are moving to Riverdale, and that's enough for me to want to move out and go join Josie wherever she moved to, New York. But yeah, that's basically what happened on this week's episode of Riverdale. Now, I don't think it was a super exciting episode, at least in my opinion, but I do get that it's setting up groundwork for some mysteries going forward this season. But like I said earlier, why does Jughead always have to be the one that's hurt or missing? Can't we, spread the wealth to someone else? Anyway, I still have a little sliver of hope that maybe this season can get the show back on track, but like I said, it's just a sliver. So let's watch the promo and see what's ahead for the next episode.
I want you out of Riverdale.
You're a number 5 to 1.
I'll take those odds.
Polly.
No, stop.
Oh my God.
Everybody get down, Betty!
Alright, now I'm not so sure if that sliver of hope is still little. It might be minuscule now. Because, really, Vigilante Archie again? Who's actually threatened by this kid? Apparently baseball bats are the only weapons we have, and, putting on a mask is... I don't know. But yeah, it definitely seems like the farm also knows what Charles and Betty are up to, because we have a bomber walking into the office. But is this Kevin's fault, or is it the farm that's just too smart? I feel like Edgar is a pretty smart criminal mastermind guy, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But that is all I got for you on this week's episode of What Happened. Now it's time for you guys to hit me up in the comments below with your thoughts on this episode. Which of these mysteries are you most excited to see unfold? Do you think Stonewall Prep has to do with this flash forward and Jughead missing? And who do you think is the next villain on the show? And if you have any other thoughts or theories, you know what to do. Leave them down below or hit me up on socials. And after that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my other recaps or videos. Sometimes I interview celebrities, and you can check out some of those right over here. Anyway, my name is Lisa, and as always, thanks for hanging out with me and listening to me ramble. I'll see you next time.